Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on building your first Microsoft Teams app without a single line of code. My name is Vlad Catrinescu, and I will be your host for this webinar. Before we get started with the amazing content we have planned for today, let me cover some of the more boring but important housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded and will be sent to everyone who registered within 48 hours after the event. And we encourage you to send a recording to any friend, colleague, or LinkedIn connection who you think might benefit from the knowledge in this webinar. And the slides will also be shared with you. We would also like to encourage you to take this opportunity to ask any questions you might have about building Teams apps. So please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask all of the questions, and we'll make sure to get to all of them during the call. Now enough of the housekeeping and let's get to the fun stuff. And first of all, I'd actually like to introduce you to our amazing special guest for this webinar, Sébastien Levert, a Microsoft MVP from Montreal, Canada, only about 30 minutes away from my house. So how are you doing, Seb?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Vlad.
Great to have you on the call, Seb. We've already done a webinar together earlier this year. I'm sure a lot of people know you, but for those of you who never heard the name before, can you do a quick introduction?
Absolutely. And I'm going to use that amazing intro slide that I have. My name is Seb, or if you'd like to use the proper name, Sébastien, which is a French name, Canadian French name. I am a product lead at Valo, been in the Office 365, Microsoft 365, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams space for now probably way too long that I will try to keep that for myself. I won't tell you how many years, but it was definitely too long. I've been a Microsoft MVP for the last 6 years now, mainly focusing on the development aspect of things. So today is definitely getting Seb out of his comfort zone, because we will not see a single line of code. And I'd like to quote here, not see a single line of code, which might be seeing a little bit of this, but you're going to understand why. So that's who I am. Happy to meet you all today, and feel free, like Vlad was saying, if there's any question that comes up during this webinar, feel free to put in the Q&A. We are going to have I'm going to pause during the session. Vlad will interrupt me if there's anything that would fit in the context, but also at the end, if there's anything, any leftovers from these questions, we're going to try to go through this. So cool. Let's start. I see the recording is flying, so we can definitely start and talk a little bit about what we're going to discuss today. So first, we're going to discuss about Microsoft Teams as a platform and how you can actually build applications on top of Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams has a huge ecosystem of applications that can be developed, can be configured, can be embedded. And we're going to really look at some of these today. The first topic we're going to cover will be around Power Apps. Power Apps is a great tool, part of the Power Platform, and will definitely be one of the first ways that you can build apps in Microsoft Teams without a single line of code. The second topic will be around Power Automate and how you can actually build a full-blown solution from A to Z using Power Automate in Microsoft Teams. A really great user experience that I think will make a huge difference for your users. And finally, we're going to talk about App Studio. App Studio is a small tool, but super, super, super interesting tool that exists as part of Microsoft Teams that allows you to build more than what Power Apps and Power Automate allow you. So we're going to build today two different apps using the App Studio, one to build a great new center for your organization, and one to build an adoption tool for your team. And finally, a couple of tips and tricks at the end, followed by our Q&A. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's move on. Let's go on to the first topic, which is about Power Apps in Microsoft Teams. So first of all, why would you consider Power Apps and Microsoft Teams together? Power Apps is doing a phenomenal job at building low-code, no-code apps directly in a WYSIWYG editor, something that is really visual, something that is really simple. But what's the role of the connection between Teams and Power Apps? And this is really where it really comes down to what is a Teams app. So today, you can already, and that's what we're going to showcase today, you can create a Power App as a personal app or as a Teams tab. It means that you can bring your app that lives in Power Apps, or maybe you have a Power App viewer inside SharePoint, or you might just use on your phone or whatsoever. But we're going to see how you can actually bring this Power App and really make it part of your digital workplace inside Microsoft Teams. What it's going to create for your users is that it's going to enhance the discoverability of apps. Because sometimes you have no clue what apps are available, what apps are targeted for you, what apps should be used in which context. But by having them as part of Microsoft Teams, which is definitely where you're spending most of your productivity time, it's going to help enhancing the understanding and the discoverability of these apps. And finally, what is really cool is that this will automatically be native on, available natively on mobile. So you will be able to consume your Power App directly from your mobile device. So if you don't mind, let me dive into a demo right away. You're going to see there's going to be very few slides today, a lot of demos. I definitely want to show you stuff and not just talk about it. So I'm going to go here. And I'm going to move on to this guy here. So here you have, I have Microsoft Teams. That is there where I actually have nothing really in there. I don't have anything on the left rail. And I built earlier, actually I did not build it. I used one of the really cool templates that Microsoft Teams is offering. And let me, Microsoft Teams, that's Power App is offering. So let me go to my Power Apps Studio or Power Apps Maker app, where I can see all the different apps that are running around my organization. And the first one is called the Shoutouts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you very quickly what this Shoutout apps is. I can go here, I can hit play, and it's going to play this Shoutouts app. It's getting my data, and then afterwards, I'm going to see, I'm going to just close that here. Looks like there's a little an error here, but it's not really, doesn't really matter. Or I have an app where I have a couple of screens. It tells me that I can send some shout out to people, and then I will be able to see, I can send a shout out to Vlad maybe. He was innovative, and there you go. And now I can just hit send, and automatically Vlad will receive the shout out. The idea here is not necessarily to go inside the details of that app. Let's pretend you have any app that you have been working on. But here, it's really about how can we bring this to Microsoft Teams. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to the Power Apps Studio, like we were a little bit earlier. So I'm just going to close this tab here. I'm going to go back to my Power Apps. So to get to Power Apps, I see that we have a question. Where do you go to show the Power Apps? You just go to the home of Power Apps. In that case, it's make.powerapps.com. You sign in with your user account, and then you're going to see all of the apps that you have access to, or that you are an editor of the app. So you're going to see all of them. You're going to be able to create, start from any data, and the apps you have access to. So what I suggest here is we're going to look at the list of apps here, and you will always have that small, more commands assigned to shoutouts here. And one of these is a marvelous button or an option called Add to Teams. Well, let's try that. I'm going to say, let's add to Teams. So it's going to do this. It's going to tell me that it's going to create an app called Shoutouts with that icon, and then I'm going to download the app. It actually, I don't really appreciate the name Add to Teams because it actually does not add to team. You can download a ready-made Power App that is converted into a Teams app, and then you're going to be able to add it to your own Teams environment. So it's not adding it directly to Teams. It's more like download the app to make it available to Teams afterwards. Once you have your app here, you will be able, so I just downloaded the app, and I can just go back here, go to my Teams environment, and I'll always have the apps section right here. Keep a note of the following. If you are in your production tenant, in your own, in your environment, in your work, in your company tenant, you will not probably be able to add any apps or whatsoever. So you will probably need to ask your IT admin to make the app available for you. It's all based on policies. So not everybody. In my case, I am an admin of my tenant, so I will be able to show you what it means. But in the end, you can just send that package to an IT admin that has the right rights on your Teams environment, and we'll be able to make this shout out app available to everybody. I see a question here. I don't have the add to Teams. Is that something that could have been removed by my admin? It is definitely something that could have been removed, or also it depends on the state of your tenant. If you're in a GCC or GCCI tenant, these capabilities might also have been removed from there. So here I'm using a regular customer Office 365 tenant that has no policies in there. So now that I'm ready, I just need to go to upload a custom app. I can also do that directly from the Teams admin center, but I feel it's definitely faster to go through this this app here. I just go here. I can upload it for myself if you have, or for the entire tenant. I'm going to go for the entire tenant, and I'm just going to select. In that case, if I go to my downloads folder, I'm going to select the shoutouts.zip. I'm going to click open, and it's going to automatically install and make this app available. As soon as it's there, you're going to see it at the bottom right. You see it here, shoutouts from Power Apps. I can click on it, and now I can add it to my tenant. So I'm going to click add, and look at what's happening here. Now I have exactly the same thing running in my Teams environment. As part of the Teams left rail right here, I now have my full shout out thing. And now when I'm ready, if I go here, I can find exactly the same thing that I saw earlier. So now every single app that you have made available inside Power Apps can be exported as an app and integrated natively directly in Teams. So not only you gain from a discoverability standpoint, because now this shoutouts app is available as part of what we call the app drawer, which is here. So I will find it here. Or you can also pin it automatically. So from now on, this app will always stay on the left because it's one of my favorite apps. So just as a reminder, Power Apps as that really amazing low-code, no-code tool. You can create any app from there to respond to any type of business or start from a template, which is what I did with shoutouts. I just started from a template. I used the shoutout templates, did not configure anything, and that's what I got in the end. So before I move on to our Power Automate section of this session, I'd like to pause maybe, Vlad, if there are any questions that are currently in the Q&A.
Sure. So there's one question from John. Is the Power App running inside a web part of some kind inside Teams there, or how is it embedded? How does it actually show in there?
So that's the beauty of Teams application. So what we're seeing right now is what we call a personal app. A personal app is basically an icon, a name, and a set of tabs. And that's why we see right now that we are on the shoutouts tab. And we could have others here if you want. You can add them. And this loads an iframe. This loads another web page, which is automatically configured to point out directly to the Power App that you need. It embeds all the single sign-on. So if there are some login capabilities, or if you need to put in your username or password or whatsoever, it's going to automatically do that for you because it's configured in a way. That's why the add to Teams functionality is so precious. It's because it configures your app in a way that you don't even have to care about thinking about security and single sign-on and all of these credentials thing. It just embeds it, and that's it. So here what you're seeing is an actual web page that runs as part of Microsoft Teams. I'm currently seeing it as part of a Teams web browser, but it would work the exact same way in the exact same set of settings inside your Teams client or your Teams native mobile client.
Awesome. And the other question, which I think you already covered, is where do you go to show the Power Apps?
Yeah, so the Power Apps is really, let's go to the Power Apps site. So you can just go on the left. Oh yeah, on the left here, you can go to your Microsoft 365 home, where you're going to see all the apps that you have access to. And logically here, I should see Power Apps. I see, there you go. I was looking for something else. So here, Power Apps, and from there, you will be able to see all the different apps you have access to that your business has been building or that you have created yourself. From there, you can create more, or you can use any of these. And it's on this screen that you will be able to get to add to Teams directly from here.
Awesome. And one last question, which you will love, Seb.
Yes.
Before we move on from Night, and this is a kind of a tough one. If we have E3 Office 365, is Common Data Service included in the license?
Oh, that's a great question, and I'd like to be a licensed master here. So I don't think an E3 for O365 actually includes the. Vlad, do you know? I know you're an expert.
That's my understanding as well. Is that
I think you have access to one environment. You can
one
have
environment, like 1 gig of space or something like that. I'm not even sure what the name for Common Data Service is now, because you know what happened with Dataflex. Microsoft changed the name to Dataflex Pro, then there was like a branding lawsuit, and now they switching back to CDS, I think.
Yeah, for now, I think it's a mix of CDS and Project Oakdale that is being used, but definitely expect to see a new name coming up in the next couple of weeks or month. I think they're going to rename the entire service. But the idea, just for folks on the webinar that don't know exactly what is the Common Data Service, you can see it as as an enterprise database that allows to play with business entities, which is kind of the core of the Dynamics side of the house at Microsoft. Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI are all part of the Dynamics organization in Microsoft, and it's kind of the super powerful database that is really, really useful to build when you're building business apps. Is the Common Data Service. But I think you get access to a CDS, but I wouldn't say a limited version of it, but not all the capabilities in there. In that case, by the way, I don't think we're not utilizing any of the CDS in the Shoutouts app, for instance.
Awesome. Thank you, Seb. Those are all the questions for now.
Perfect. And feel free to continue asking those. More than happy to answer. So we covered Power Apps, and I really want just to, the goal here is not to how to build the app, but how to integrate it in Microsoft Teams. I think we did a great job here. Next topic, Power Automate in Microsoft Teams. We think a lot about Power Automate as being, I'm going to use the banned word now, kind of a SharePoint designer replacement or a workflow engine, which it is. And I definitely agree. I see Power Automate as being kind of a way to orchestrate your business. But I think Power Automate can do so much more. And you can actually treat Power Automate as a way to build business apps. It is possible directly from Power Automate to bring data from anywhere. Think about one of your, I don't know, database that you have, one of your systems, a SharePoint list, a form, the common data service, a record in your Dynamics marketing or whatsoever. You can bring any of that data inside Microsoft Teams. We're going to use for this a technology called adaptive cards. Adaptive cards are a way to visualize data in a format that you don't have to care about the look and feel or whatsoever. You just need to plug in what data you want where, and automatically Microsoft Teams or any other product that supports adaptive cards will be able to render. So that's great to give information. Think about the following scenario. There is a new customer that was just created in your Dynamics database. Automatically, Power Automate can flow within Power Automate can react to the creation of that customer, automatically find the Office 365 group or the team that represents this customer, and inside the general channel, say a customer was created or a new contact was created attached to this customer. So that's great. But I'd love to be able to do kind of a two-way communication, not just informing users, but get feedback from users directly from Microsoft Teams. So that way, I can also, inside a flow, react to this action and do something else. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the next demo. We will be building a flow that will act as, it's one of the most common, I think, one of the most common requests from corporate communications to be able to do a weekly poll every week and get the answers from everybody. And then afterwards, make decisions. Especially in a world of COVID, I think it's important to kind of ensure the well-being and health of all of our employees. So basically today what we're going to do, we're going to ask a question to all the users, and the users will answer natively without building forms or whatsoever, all within Teams utilizing Power Automate. So let me do this. Let me go there, and let me go back to my Teams area. I'm going to close my Power Apps tab so I can spend a little bit more space in here. I'm going to leave this. I'm going to go to Microsoft Power Automate. So here, same again, Power Automate, you just go via your app launcher that exists, the now famous by his culinary term, the waffle menu, where you can go to Power Automate in here. Power Automate is that super powerful tool that allows you to automate a lot of your business. And what I did is I already pre-built a Power Automate flow. Didn't want to build it in front of you, but we're going to go through some of the main steps that we're doing here. Before we do it, I'm going to actually show you what we have been doing. So I'm going to go here. Actually, I'm going to go, let me do this. Let me do PNP HR. I know I have a site called. So I'm going to go to SharePoint. So I'm going to go to my human resources. I have a human resources site. In there, there's nothing. That site is attached to a Microsoft team. So I have a team that is in Microsoft Teams. So let me show you the Microsoft Teams as there. I have human resources here. And in there, I have, if I go to my site contents, I'm going to find a polls. So every day, every week, someone from HR could go to that list and ask a question to everybody. So I'm gonna I'm gonna go here. Do I really have that? I have. I don't know. Oh, that would have been funny. Fire people in HR SP page. That would have been funny. Sorry, I'm leading. I do have it. Anyway, we're gonna come back to that later. I'm just reading the comments. So here, I'm gonna create an item. That item will have. Okay, so the title is COVID poll, and the question will be, how are you feeling this week? And I'm gonna give 3 choices: amazing, okay, sick. So that's a way for HR to understand how the team, how everybody is working here. So that's fair. I'm okay. So I'm gonna just hit save. When I'm gonna hit save, some magic will happen. I just created a list item in SharePoint, and in a couple of seconds, I will be getting a message directly inside Microsoft Teams. So let me go back to Teams, and I should get a message quite rapidly. And this is, I might be affected by the demo effect or whatsoever. It takes usually between 1 or 2 minutes before an actual SharePoint item hits flow to automatically trigger some of the logic in there. But we're gonna wait here and see what's gonna be the effect on the user experience. To give you a little bit of an understanding of what is happening, the HR person creates that poll, that item in SharePoint. Automatically Flow or Power Automate picks it up, says, oh, we have a new question. We're gonna create a nice visualization of a way for the user to respond to this. And when the user responds, we're gonna store the information back inside SharePoint to literally get, to know how people are feeling. So I just received a message. I'm gonna go here. Now I'm gonna see, yeah, here, forget about the title here. But here, the weekly poll is about, well, yeah, should definitely change these in the, and we're gonna change them later on. But here, please vote on, in that case, on are you feeling well, are you not feeling well? And here I'm just gonna say, I am amazing. Already this is cool because I get automatic feedback from Flow. Flow is saying, hey, I'm just reaching out to everybody. Everybody gets this. So here I can just go amazing and hit submit. What is even better is that now it actually registered my answer directly inside Flow. And if I go back to my site contents, I will find a poll answers where I will see that Sebastian answered amazing to the COVID poll. So automatically afterwards, I can build any type of reporting system on top of this list and see how many of my users have been creating, are feeling good, are not feeling good, are sick, and then we can maybe follow trends around this. So how is this happening? Let's go to Power Automate, where I will find in my flows something that I call the Poll O Master. And let me edit that flow directly from here. And let's go through what is happening in there. And this is where you might start seeing a little bit of code, because that's the beauty of the low-code, no-code platforms like Power Apps and Flow. You actually have to code a little bit, or to at least understand some of the concepts to really have a really good experience. So the first thing that happens is it automatically, it is triggered. It is triggered from a site in there, where we have a site, which is this one here, human resources. We're looking at the polls, and automatically we're gonna get this information in there. And based on these all options that was sent by the HR person, we will be having a flow that is going to happen. First, we will be generating some stuff. So here is more of the technical area where we're going to create a variable called, what are the poll choices? What are the amazing, okay, or sick that was set by the HR person? Here we're going to create an array. This is probably the most technical thing. We're going to create a string or an area where we're going to build the format of the adaptive card this here. We're going to build this UI here, this form directly from the flow. So we have to build and create all of these small custom things in there. Afterwards, we're going to say, hey, what are all the human resources members? I want to send to everybody that is part of a specific group. Maybe I don't want to send to everybody. Maybe I want to send to only people in IT, or only people in HR, or people that are member of a specific group in your organization. So what I'm doing here is I get all the information, and Vlad does not know this, but I know that Vlad has an account on this environment, and actually Vlad just got the exact same message as I did. So he will be able to answer the same question. He'll be able to say if he feels amazing, okay, or absolutely not. And afterwards, for all of these HR group members, I will be able to do the following. I will be able to use an action in Flow, which is, I think, the most critical action in this case, which is I want to post an adaptive card to a user and wait for a response. That means that I'm going to post a card, what we have here, right, in Microsoft Teams, this area right there. But I want not only to send information, but wait for a response back from this. And this is where we will build for a recipient, which is the current user that we're iterating on, and where we have the message. And this is where the code comes into play. The beauty of this is that we have a really, really nice site that helps you building these directly from there. So we can build these adaptive cards without even the need of knowing any of that code. To do that, you just need to go here and you say adaptive cards designer, which is, I have all the reference at the end of the slide deck, which is here where you can actually build these nice adaptive cards. And you can say, I want to add an image right here, or I want to have a text right here, or I want to have a button or a date right here. And automatically it builds that adaptive card, what we call a payload, the information that represents what we're going to send to the user. So don't try to do it just using Notepad or whatsoever. Please use the adaptive card designer. It's going to really help you. Then afterwards, we send all of this information right here, right there. And here, what we're going to do is we are going to update this guy here, and we're going to make it tied to the item that was created, which was the title in here, the title of the poll. And here, the description, we're going to update it to the question of the poll. So now we basically making it a lot more dynamic. And what's happening is once this will be sent, so this will be sent to the user, and it will wait for a response. So as soon as a user chooses one of these options back, then automatically we're going to create an item based on the title, the user, and the poll that is related to our current polling system that we just built. So in here, of quite a natural / regular way of building a flow with an outcome that is quite simple, which is to create an item in SharePoint. But that's really the way that we can make all of this work nicely all together. And now every single new poll that I want to add to my polls list, so if I go back here and I create a new poll, I go here, and I'm going to say favorite food. I'm going to call it, what's your favorite food. And I go in choices, I'm gonna say this pasta, thigh, or pizza. Well, automatically everybody will now get that question asked, and we'll automatically get a new card here and a new card here, and automatically we're gonna get a new, it's gonna also get all the updated information that we just added right in Power Automate in the flow that we just touched a couple of seconds ago. So that really brings us to building interactive solutions with our users without really coding, really just connecting blocks together, the blocks that are available as part of Power Automate. And finally, really having the full experience as part of Teams, because I also get that on my mobile. I get that as a message on my mobile, and I can vote right away. So if I'm on the road and I want to report back what's my favorite food, well, I can do it here, and I can say pizza, and I just hit submit, and automatically it's going to create another record in that poll answers list where we're going to have my answer, my name, and for which poll that I was doing this. So I really think that this has a ton of potential, because now you can really bring the user experience to be as great as possible without really having to build those really complex bots or whatsoever. You can just do that using Power Automate. So let me pause for a second. Vlad, do we have any question around Power Automate and how it enhances the team's experience?
So one of the questions, not really about Power Automate, but about kind of the example that you gave is, what's the best mechanism for doing multiple question surveys? Is this something that you could do using the same mechanism you showed?
Yes, so you can actually have it's really, really interesting. You can have in the same, in our case, the way that we build the system, it was one question, one answer, but you could actually build a card, an adaptive card that has accordion in there or multiple questions in there. And you can have as many as you want, and you can get the results of all of these questions. So it's just a matter of, if I'm going back to Power Automate here, to have multiple choices and have those repeated as many times as you need them, and provide the choices that you need. So you can have as many. You can also go with a text. You can go with the date. You can go with adding an image. You can really go quite deep in the way that you can integrate your choices right there.
Okay, questions are starting to come in. So question from John. Have you run into any permission issues when running this poll flow to all of the members of a tenant?
So we, there's definitely some scaling that we need to take into considerations. Here, this is really just adding content or posting these adaptive cards to members of a team. So usually that's quite of a limited subset of the users. So we haven't run into any performance or permissions issue, because literally the account that I'm using is a member of that team, so it has access to all the members automatically.
Awesome. Okay, question from Manish now. Is there any way to display a thank you message in the adaptive card so that the user cannot submit multiple times?
Actually, it is definitely possible. So you just need to, what we call send an update card. So in the end, and it's not done in the sample, which could be a great sample here. You can send an update message, and the update message is not an update message per se, but it's a new card that will replace the previous one. So what you could do is, with the results of the previous card, you can say, okay, I'm going to select, in my case, pizza, and I'm going to remove the button, and I'm going to say thank you. So automatically the user will not be able to select a new value and resubmit it in there. In my case, even if the user was resubmitting it, the flow is completed, so it will not launch another answer. But I agree with you, the experience is not that great, because you can think that you can still submit it.
Awesome. Great. Okay, let's see. There was one about, okay, what connectors are used in this flow? Are they premium?
They're not.
Everything is standard
Yep,
Office 365.
O365 groups, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams, all part of Office 365, all parts of basically any license that include Power Automate for Office 365. So no cost involved here.
Awesome. And now, one question, never mind. I thought it was two people asking the exact same questions. But can we increase the do until control to more than 30 days?
That's a very good question. And I don't have a clear answer for that. And Vlad might be able to help me on that one. I would say no, unless you call your flow again. So basically that you have a logic that you handle those limited 30 days in there. I think if you run these instead of using them in Power Automate, if you run them in Logic Apps, which is kind of the Azure version of Power Automate, I think it's possible to go above 30 days. But in the Power Automate, to create a simple one, it is not possible unless you call yourself another time at the end. There's some scenarios that were posted on the web. I've seen a lot of blog posts around this to kind of build these automatically extending flows. I think an MVP from Belgium, Serge Lucas, is quite a master on that.
Yeah, I was actually going to put the name Serge Lucas. He's the one that's been the more, I wouldn't say hacking, but kind of finding creative solutions around Power Automate limitations. Sorry.
Exactly. That's exactly the case.
Okay, and one last question before we move forward. Can you actually create those Power Automate flows and Power Apps directly from Teams without going to the website? Do they have an app to create directly from Teams or not?
I think if it's not out there, I think it's something that is coming where you will be able to create apps directly from Teams. If I'm not mistaken, I've seen, I think at Build actually they announced something like that. Really great experience, by the way, where you're going to be able to do that. So yes, I think it's something that is, if it's not already there, it's definitely on the roadmap.
Awesome. That's it for now. I think we only have 15 minutes left. So if I remember correctly, you still wanted to cover the App Studio.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I'm really excited about. So let's go over that one and then we'll come back to the rest of the questions.
Perfect. So the last topic is around the App Studio. One of the, I would say, main areas of customization in Microsoft 365 that people have invested really, really serious amount of money in customizing is SharePoint. SharePoint pages, SharePoint web parts, embedding of complex solution in the SharePoint page. And if you're like me, you'd like to have these apps follow you around, to have these apps as part of your Microsoft Teams experience. So the App Studio is kind of the gateway to make this happen, which is, I think, really, really interesting. What is the App Studio? Well, first, it is a developer tool. Let's call it developer, like in quotes, that enables the creation of a Teams app manifest. So you can basically create a Teams app out of a couple of information that you have to give the App Studio. Nothing technical, a name, a description, a logo, these type of things. Then afterwards, it also offers multiple areas of customization. Maybe you're using a bot internally, or you're using messaging extensions or connectors or whatsoever, which are way more technical areas. But the last one is something called the static tabs. And static tabs are what a personal app is made of. And this is really what we're going to focus on today. It also offers to enable single sign-on. So it means that automatically the Teams app will do everything it can to log you in to the system that you're requiring. So if you have a SharePoint page, you will not be prompted with a username and password. It's going to automatically take the identity that you have in Teams and will automatically send it to SharePoint, so you're always logged in. And why would you use that? Well, first is to integrate any web apps. Here we're going to talk about SharePoint, but any of the web apps that you have been building, an internal HR system, your service desk, anything can be integrated inside Microsoft Teams. In our case, we will be integrating SharePoint pages directly inside Teams. And you're going to see that these SharePoint pages are becoming literally apps inside Microsoft Teams without you needing to go to another experience like a browser or your device or something like that. So let's go here and let's go to the App Studio. The App Studio is an app that you have to install. So you go to More Apps and you're gonna search for App Studio in here. This app needs to be installed in your tenant to be able to use it. So it's something that you might want to ask your IT admin to make sure that it is available to you. And then once it's installed, when you click on it, you just hit open. It opens up this experience here, including on top, a manifest editor. And this is really the area that we want to focus on today. The rest is interesting, but for me, the App Studio is really about validating the manifest and using the WYSIWYG or the simple way of creating an app. So you're going to go here and you will be able to see that I have two apps. And we're going to start with the News Center. And then we're going to go to the Getting Started afterwards. The first one is a News Center. This one is a full SharePoint News Center directly in Microsoft Teams. How did I get that to work? Well, first I hit here. I did create a new app. And then I filled all these details that are already filled for my app for the News Center. So we're just going to go and see what's in here. I'm going to click here. So here you have to fill in a name. So in that case, it's going to be the News Center, a full name. If you want to maybe go a little bit more detailed, you're going to generate an ID. Each app needs a specific identifier. In that case, you just hit the button generate. It's going to generate an ID for you. You give it a package name. It doesn't really matter. It just needs to be unique. A version, in our case, it's the version 1. A description and a full description. Who's the company? What's the website? If you are a Microsoft partner, you can put in your Microsoft partner number, ID, right here. What are the app URLs? Basically, those are all for privacy, also for term of use. So your users, especially if you're distributing these apps in the Team Store, it's important to have all of these legal chit-chats all over the place. And where it really becomes interesting is here, the branding. So here I don't know if you can actually see it nicely, but you actually have a news icon, which is similar to this one here, a color. You can define a color in there, and you can define if you will be using a full screen or not. The full screen experience is really interesting because it really takes the entire space that Teams is giving you. I won't be using it, but I really highly encourage you to try it out because I really think it's a great experience in itself. And where we're gonna actually say, well, okay, now I have a name, I have details, I have an icon, but what does it do? Well, for now, it does nothing. And let's go to the tabs area where we're gonna see what it does. Well, here what we did is we added a personal tab, and we can see that we have one tab that is called News and is actually just this. It has an ID, in that case, the News Center page, and it has a URL. The URL here is a very simple, yet you need to remember this URL, because here's the trick. And let me do this. Let me open up maybe Visual Studio here, just to show you something quickly, just so we all see the URL here. So the URL is the following. It's your tenant. So your tenant.sharepoint.com with that special URL afterwards, _layout/15/Teams logon, SPFX, destination and everything. What is that segment of the URL does? It is a segment of the URL that will ensure that you are always logged in to the actual page that you really want to reach, which is the next one. The next one is just a regular simple SharePoint URL. In that case, in a site called Project Hub, in a page called News Center. So automatically it's going to log me in and it's going to redirect me afterwards to this News Center. So that's the URL that you're going to have to put in. And you also have to put in a website URL. You're going to see I'm going to have a small globe logo where I can just click and open that in my browser. Once this is done, I have nothing else to do. So I can just go here, test and distribute, and I can install the app. And now I can just hit add, and I'm going to see the following. It's going to add the app. It should not take too long. It's going to redirect me to the app, where now I see I'm in Teams, fully in Teams, and I have a nice page here, which is a news center. Those are all the news that exists on my tenant. I have multiple pages here. It brings me back up, and all of these. I can also search, so I can say champion, can hit for champion, and now I can see that I have a bunch of champion content that is right here that really makes me find the content that I want without me going to SharePoint in itself. I build that, that page in SharePoint using the components that are available in my tenant, using some of maybe your custom components you build or your custom web parts. Same thing for custom pages, and automatically you get that. You can also come here and filter the content here and say, hey, I want to have something created in the, I don't know, before August 20. Well, it looks like this is maybe a little bit broken here, but it is really a great way to find all that content. So you can bring any page, and I can show you the page. This is the page I'm referring to. So in the real world, when we are inside SharePoint, the page looks like that. But there's some really interesting magic happening behind the scenes with Teams. And when you embed a SharePoint page in Teams, it gets rid, it removes a lot of the experience. It removes the suite bar, it removes the header to really make you focus only on the content of the page, meaning that, well, now this is literally like a search app, a regular search app. And this is really how you can build as many apps or as many tabs as you want to have the full-blown experience in here. So that's the first example. A second example is exactly the same thing. I won't go through some of the ways that we configured it, because we're doing it exactly the same way using, if I go back to my App Studio, you're gonna find that in my manifest editor, I have another one called Get Started. And here, it's exactly the same thing, the same elements in there, the same approach for the tabs. But what is interesting with this app is we are leveraging one of the key success factor of a successful rollout of Office 365 or Microsoft 365 is the adoption, is the training. And here what we did, we created an app called Get Started that is actually leveraging a tool that Microsoft has provided, which is the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways, which is a collection of learning material around Office 365 and all the tools. So here, you can search by getting started, by scenario, by product. Okay, I want to learn more about Teams. And I want to learn more about how to work with posts and messages. And now I can go here and I can try it. I can type a message. I can change from one to the other. I can go here and see how to get attention with a mention. And all of these are provided by Microsoft. All of these playlists of content are provided by Microsoft. So it's an amazing tool to make everybody in your organization realize the value of Microsoft Teams, Microsoft 365, and everything in between. So I really believe that this is kind of an app that everybody should have in their Microsoft Teams. So it drives adoption, it drives understanding and knowledge on the Microsoft 365 platform. And as you can see, it took me 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes to build the app, get the right icons, make it look beautiful, and then afterwards I can promote it to everybody in the organization. So these approaches to bring any SharePoint content right inside Microsoft Teams, I think it's a huge benefit for organization to really take full advantage of the app environment that exists with Teams. So I'm just gonna move on and go to the tips and tricks, and then take all the questions in like 1 minute or two. Couple of tips and tricks to keep in mind. First, if you want to use the mobile experience, if you want to see all of these apps that you created as a mobile app, you will need to go in your mobile device inside your Teams app, and you will have to put on your app in a developer mode, in the developer preview, to be able to test and everything. If not, it's not yet rolled out globally to everybody that has access to the Power Apps or to the tabs, the personal apps that we just showed with SharePoint available in the Teams app. The last thing, remember that single sign-on capabilities have the full-blown documentation after in the references just after. Remember to do this, because you're going to try it, you're going to develop it maybe as part of your web browser. It's going to be super easy, it's going to always work, and as soon as you're going to come to the full rich Microsoft Teams client, it might be a little bit of an issue. So think about that SharePoint Online SSO. It's always super important. So a couple of resources. I'm going to leave that page up on the screen while we take the questions. Those are some of the examples that I just showed: the adaptive cards designer, how to build a Teams app out of a SharePoint site. So all of this is available right on this screen, so you will be able to reference it and do it yourself. So Vlad, do we have any question on any of the topics we discussed today?
We have quite a few questions. So let me scroll to the top. We should give you an idea. Okay, so back to your, actually, let me start with the App Studio one. This way we kind of go more in order. So with App Studio, well, it looks like my microphone is buzzing a bit. So Seb, take a look at the Q&A and let me replug this.
Okay, perfect. So we covered this one. One question was around the Power Automate. Let's say that we want to limit the poll to only the next 3 days. What you could do is limit the answers to 3 days. And if the answer is not there, terminate the flow. So there's a way to do that automatically. Wait until 3 days. If no answers, automatically terminate. And that's a really good use case. Sometimes, especially if you want to run weekly polls, you don't want people to answer like 4 weeks ago today. So definitely it is possible through a do until or a wait action in Power Automate to do that. So I think that answers this.
Okay, I think I'm back with a normal working microphone,
Yes,
Seb.
it's good now.
Yes, okay, perfect. Can we do an email connector, for example, show the emails that get in and show them on a Teams channel?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
that should be, I think, pretty easy to do.
Yeah, exactly. There's a trigger in the Outlook connector, I think it's called. So you can actually get an email automatically when an email comes in, broadcast this email in the Teams in a Teams channel, or do the opposite way. Maybe have people answer the questions in our poll and then sending that answer via email to someone. The Exchange or the Outlook 365 connector, I don't know exactly how it's called, but the email connector that exists in Power Automate is exactly made for that.
Awesome. Great question from Knight here. With the App Studio, we can add the internal SharePoint intranet to Teams. And how will the authentication work with the different web parts? For example, a stream that would be embedded, maybe Yammer embedded in the page, yes, and everything else.
That's an amazing question. And I think I have a really great answer for you all. So first, embedding the intranet as part of Teams is exactly the same way that I just showed. The beauty of it is, and if you remember, I'm going to put it back on the screen, is that magic URL, these first steps here. This will automatically log you in. So for everything else, Stream, Yammer, the Outlook connectors, and everything that would reside on your page, if it uses the first party web part will all work, that is for sure. So Stream, Yammer, and everything will work out of the box. And if your web part, your custom web part, is utilizing the SharePoint framework, which is kind of the best practice way of building SharePoint web parts today, and uses some of the underlying authentication libraries to connect to either the graph, SharePoint, or any of your third-party solutions, and does it in the right way, everything will be seamlessly authenticated. And that's really the beauty of it. You will not get any prompt at any time. Teams will take care of the rest.
Awesome. Okay, now how can we deploy a specific app in the left, so a personal app, to all of the users of a tenant? And
yes,
I'm actually going to take this one since it's more on the IT pro side and for you on the dev side, Seb.
Please, because I love to be God in my tenant, so I always have access to everything, but you might have a better answer than me here.
So the answer is you would do this through a Teams app setup policy. So you need to be a Teams administrator or a global administrator. Inside your Teams admin center under apps, you have a place for app setup policies. And that's where you can actually, and I think Seb will be going there right now. He knows the URL by heart. Not bad for a dev, Seb. Then under Teams app here, setup policies, you can go in the default one, or you can create a new one. And here you can actually have pre-installed apps or pre-pin them in the order that you want, actually. So let's say the earlier example of a SharePoint intranet, you want this to be at the top.
Yeah.
You could do it. So this needs to be done by an admin, but can definitely be done.
So I don't know how it's called, actually. I don't know why it's not in there. That's interesting. But I know that my shout out app is here. I could add it here, add, and now basically select it and move up, and automatically it's going to be shown as the first one. And you can add, I think you can add as many as you want.
But there's a limit in how many of them until the 3 dots kind of.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that that's going to take, what, 24 hours maybe to propagate to everybody?
24. Well, I would say wait 36 hours before opening a support ticket, but it'll take somewhere between 1-2 hours and 36 hours before it's seen.
Makes sense. And just to maybe add here, what is interesting is you can also target these setup policies to specific groups of people. So maybe you want to deploy an app to everybody that is in HR, but not to anybody else. So you can really select which groups of people can actually benefit from these automatically pinned apps.
Yes, and this is also where, again, we're going really on the IT pro side, but in that location in a team admin center, you also have that permission policies and the general app settings for everything. So a lot of things you can manage from there. Okay, so are there any issues if I put a Power App on a SharePoint 2016 on-prem site?
That is a very good question that I will nicely redirect back to you, Vlad, as Vlad is kind of the on-prem god that exists in the SharePoint world. So I actually don't have the answer exactly how it works from a hybrid perspective.
So the thing is, there's not really a hybrid way of doing it with 2016. There's no set web part, but you can embed it as an iframe, basically.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that, of course, you have your single sign-on enabled for users so they don't get that authentication prompt. And you need to make sure that, of course, clients have internet access, but then it would just be an iframe embed, basically. Nothing really fancy like you have online with a dedicated Power Apps web part.
Makes sense.
Okay, one last question. As I see, we're already 6 minutes over time. We still got 40 people on, which is awesome. Back to your Power Automate example. It looks like poll allows multiple responses by the same users. How could we restrict it?
That would be really, and as we discussed a little bit earlier, is to utilize the update message. So once someone replied, we would replace the card, the adaptive card, with another one that would not have the ability to submit, basically, with a thank you message or something like that. If not, the card does not know that you actually answered the question, but Flow knows. So by updating the card to re-embed the information that you need, that would be the best way to do it. Like a nice thank you message, you voted for pizza, and then that's it. So we can update these cards automatically.
Awesome. Well, this is it, Seb. Thank you very much for spending 1 hour of your time for sharing the knowledge with the community. I know everybody, we got a lot of great thank you messages in the chat. So thank you very much again for participating. And for everybody that's still on, remember that all of the slides and the recording will be sent to you within 48 hours. The recording will be on YouTube, so feel free to share it with anybody that you think might be interested. We really want to make this knowledge available to everybody in the community. And thank you again, Seb. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a great rest of the day. And we're almost Friday. Almost there.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, everybody. It was great to have a chat with all of you. And feel free, if there's any other question, feel free to reach out to Vlad for any of those, and I'll be happy to answer.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.